Thanks everyone for joining the monthly Arc Server Forum. Here we have both customers and a lot of Microsoft folks as well joining in, and we share what's the latest and greatest with Arc Server, as well as demos of new capabilities, roadmap, and feedback as well. So you're really getting the cutting edge of what's going on from the Azure Arc Enabled Server product group. With that said, today we're going to be deep diving into a couple of capabilities, as well as providing a little bit of roadmap just to start off with from a housekeeping perspective. First, I'll be sharing a little bit about some of our broader thinking around SCCM modernization and kind of how we're approaching this with some of our upcoming investments. Next, I'll be handing it to Justin and Maddie. We're going to be talking about a really new capability that I know a lot of folks have been asking about, which is Auto Agent Upgrade. And we're going to be able to dive into the details there. You've probably seen this with the release notes, with the new agent versions, but we're going to be able to share more there. Next, we're going to have Theo, who's going to do a demo of Azure Site Recovery configuration. So as you might recall, we announced the Windows Server management enabled by Arc that included a bunch of different Azure management benefits and new Windows Server capabilities available at no additional cost for our SA customers, including this site recovery configuration, which is included as something you can configure at no cost. Obviously, the site recovery itself may incur some additional costs there, but Theo will be walking through that in more detail, as well as a demo. And then we'll wrap up with an Ops 360, which is a new initiative feedback session live with Megan, Maddie, and Gail as well. So really looking forward to today's session. Lots of chances to provide feedback, and you're really going to get a taste of everything that's sort of new and coming out of our product group from the server perspective. The first topic I wanted to chat about is SCCM modernization. And as part of this, I also wanted to share with you some documentation that we just newly published related to this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. But effectively, if you think about it at a kind of high level, the Arc Server, product team, we're really thinking about how Azure Arc facilitates modern server management. And we're still working to sort of define what that looks like in terms of what it looks like for SCCM customer, but we're thinking it's akin to what Intune looks like for client for SCCM customer. Arc is going to do the same thing from a server management lens. And you've probably noticed that with some of our Azure management capabilities like update management and machine configuration, with the patching and configuration capabilities, it's sort of matching to what SCCM can do, but there's still some gaps in terms of what SCCM can do and Azure Arc can't do. At the same time, we know there's a really high overlap between the Arc server customer base and the SCCM customer base, especially a lot of customers that continue to use SCCM for core management scenarios, but are using Arc for security and monitoring. Think Defender, Monitor, Sentinel. And so with that perspective, we really want to present and make clear a little bit more about this landscape. So we wanted to highlight a few things. One is sort of how do these services map? And the first set is sort of what are the core kind of capability mappings? We have Azure Update Manager from an OS patching perspective that maps to that key function with SCCM. We have Azure Machine Configuration, which is also Azure Policy Guest Configuration or Desired State Configuration that maps pretty closely with OS and application configuration capabilities as well. And you get the native reporting with Azure Policy, the customization of authoring your own DSC, etc. Then from a reporting perspective, we have change tracking and inventory. We're able to look at the software, registries on the server and how those change over time, and the reporting as well. And finally, you have run command from a remote scripting perspective. And there continue to be some key distinctions, right? And with the new announced Windows Server management benefits, one key distinction is all of these management services, if you're a Windows Server SA customer, are actually included at no additional cost with Azure Arc that map to the SCCM equivalent. So there's a tremendous cost-saving aspect to it. And even for those servers that are not associated with the Windows Server SA or don't have that coverage, you can leverage the sort of consumptive pricing that Azure offers instead. Another key distinction we know is the support for Linux. We know a lot of customers aren't just running Windows Server, they have Linux, and that's actually difficult to manage with SCCM alone. So the support for Linux across all of these management services in Arc is another key differentiator. The third one is the integrations with both Azure Copilot from an AI-enabled operations perspective, where that's able to ease a lot of management experiences, but also the migration integration if you're thinking about Arc as part of your migration and modernization journey. That said, we do recognize, and I think there were comments on this in the chat as well, there's some really critical gaps, especially with when it comes to the sort of patching piece of app patching and software distribution. And so one area we're investing in and focused on is software distribution around VM apps. And in tandem, the Azure Update Manager team is working on application patching as well as part of their longer term roadmap. So this is sort of a longer term roadmap you're seeing here. You'll notice there's no ETAs or timelines, but it's a key focus. The final ones we wanted to highlight here is we know that a lot of customers with SCCM are using distribution points. They have local caching, etc. From a bandwidth perspective, networking optimization perspective, you might be running workloads in like a local branch office, and that makes sense. And so there's definitely going to be upcoming product group feedback sessions and research dedicated to that and better understanding those scenarios. The final two here is run command, which is public preview today. We're focused on some investments to continue driving that to GA. So you'll continue to see development there. And Operations 360, which there'll be a little bit more feedback about coming forward. But we wanted to share some of these high-level roadmap investments just to show that we are listening and we are aware of the key gap with app deployment and app patching, and that's sort of top of mind for us just from a pure capability mapping perspective. We realize it's not always possible to author a custom DSC in order to do application deployment on your Arc servers. But that said, we also understand that there's areas that we probably don't know about across distribution points, local caching, etc., that we'll continue to evolve and understand. But we're hoping to continue to build up more and more robust documentation on this entire guidance around modern server management, more collateral demos that you can try out and play out with as well. That said, just getting really tactical, the top one that we mentioned is around VM apps, around software distribution. We have this Arc VM apps feedback sign up link. So if you're interested in talking to the product group with us in more detail about software distribution, your specific software distribution needs, and to be an early partner as we bring that into private preview, we'd love to chat with you. So you can fill out that ak.ms Arc VM apps feedback slide. With that, that's a high-level overview of just what we're thinking about from SCCM Arc perspective. And we'll have follow-up sessions where we'll bring in the Update Manager product team as well. So if you have any questions related to SCCM and Arc server management, I'm also going to just drop my email. You probably get the newsletter. You can just directly email and we'll loop in the right folks in order to help kind of think through your scenarios, etc. And I do want to clarify that you can use the SCCM client, the agent, with the Arc agent on the same server. They don't interfere or cause problems. I know that there was some issues related with AUM with that in the past, but a lot of that has been resolved today. And with respect to AUM specific cases, we're happy to triage that, John, as you put in the chat. So feel free to drop a note, and we'll help that. Awesome. Well, with that, we have so much on our agenda today. I'm going to hand over to Justin Maddie. We're going to be chatting about the auto agent upgrade and walking through that. So please take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Justin. I'm one of the engineers on the Arc for Servers team, and we're excited to launch this new auto agent upgrade feature in private preview very soon. Next slide, please. Or can I control this? Yeah. So the goals with agent auto upgrade are sort of to prevent issues where users are on very old versions and run into issues. This way we can sort of keep the entire fleet of machines on a reasonably recent version. And this brings benefits like giving customers the most recent security patches and also reduce the amount of bugs that customers run into if they're on the most recent version. And we want to do it in a way where you guys don't have to sort of manually go inside and press anything. All you need to do is opt in, and we'll handle the rest. So this is a step to opt in to automatic agent upgrades. All you need to do is make a single patch request to your specific Arc resource with this enable automatic upgrade property. I've given an example in PowerShell below. Once we've sort of opened up this feature to everyone, you just need to run something similar in your favorite HTTP client, and your machine will be opted in. And what that means is that once you release a new version, as long as you're on a specific agent version that supports auto upgrade, so I believe that is anything from this year, in the future, when we release newer versions, you will receive an automatic upgrade within, we want to say like about a month. So the goal of this isn't necessarily to keep everyone on the same version immediately when it comes out. It's just sort of to prevent the issues that arise when we have someone who's on, like 1.25 from like 2 years ago. And here's a sort of a brief overview of what happens on your specific server that will orchestrate the auto upgrade. So after you opt in, we get that data and we essentially determine the set of machines that we want to upgrade that have opted in. And every single time your agent communicates to our service during a heartbeat, which is every 5 minutes, it'll receive the data pertaining to auto upgrade and save that on a local machine. And during installation of the agent, we have a scheduled task or cron job on the machine that will run every day and check for this data saved locally that is from the service. And essentially, it will check if auto upgrade is enabled and if you are on the latest version, and use that to determine whether or not it wants to try updating your agent locally. So, like I mentioned earlier, I want to emphasize that this is a pretty hands-off process. Once you opt in, that is the only manual step you need to take. And hopefully this will ensure that the experience is more stable and more secure for everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Justin. But if you are interested in taking part in the private preview of Auto Agent Upgrade, there's a QR code for you to fill out with a few quick questions. And then I will also paste the link in the chat if that's easier, but it is just aka.ms/signup-auto agent upgrade. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And does anyone on the call have any questions for Maddie and Justin while we've got them here about the auto agent upgrade capability? Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and ask.
Much like with the extensions, you can see the status of, when they last upgraded and if there's a failure, what the failure modes were. Will there be that kind of visibility with the agent itself?
Hi, yes, actually, yeah, I should have mentioned that, but yeah, inside the resource model, inside the same section where that property I mentioned is, there's going to be a couple properties. Like you mentioned, there's going to be a reason for failure. There's going to be a last status timestamp and also a last status message. So you'll be able to diagnose what happened on this last attempt, and our agent already reports what agent version it's on. So you'll be able to see what the target version is, and as well as what the current agent is.
Thank you.
Question for you, will there be options to roll back if there's an issue?
Currently, the idea is that let's say we release 1.50 tomorrow. We're not going to release the auto upgrade to 1.50 immediately. Just in case, there's errors with the current version we release. It's sort of once we determine that the version is stable and okay, we're going to roll out to everyone. The issue with rolling back is that our agent installer doesn't we have some issues with the installer and rolling back to a previous version. So we sort of have to roll forward and it brings some complications. But I guess ignoring all that, the idea is that we only want to release stable versions to this pipeline. So hopefully that minimizes those type of problems.
Awesome. And I think we have a question in the chat from Dustin about if we can ring those updates, i.e. deploy the tag on end A and tag 2 on n+6 days, etc., etc.
Unfortunately, not yet. The scheduled task runs every day on your machine. So while we are planning on some batching logic, it's not something that's necessarily deterministic.
Awesome. Thanks again, Justin and Maddie, for joining us and sharing. Oh, and one more question, is auto agent upgrade coming for Linux?
Yes, it is. It's coming for Linux and Windows.
Great question, Armin. We are great at Linux as well. So we have a lot of support for Linux capabilities across almost everything we talk about. Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Justin, Maddie. With that, I'll hand over to Theo. And if there are additional questions, Justin, Maddie, I'll ask you to keep monitoring the chat. So Theo, we'll have you come up and share more about Azure Site Recovery configuration.
All right. Thank you so much, Arnav. Hi, everyone. My name is Theo Tran, and I am one of the Windows Server team, working with the Azure Arc folks to build up these specific Windows Server management experiences in the portal. So here we have Azure Site Recovery configuration, and the key word is configuration. And it will essentially walk you through creating a vault, a Hyper-V site, replication policy, and then of course, install the Azure Site Recovery agent on your machine. So we go next, we'll see a demo. But this configuration tool is supposed to help users with the prerequisite steps that you need to do before you begin enabling replication for your VM. Actually, do I have control? Can I move it forward?
Feel free to take control.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Do you want me to move it? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. It will essentially connect, associate the agent with the replication policy, the vault, the Hyper-V site, so you don't have to do all of that prerequisite manual configuration that usually it's error prone because you have to download and install a separate thing on your machine. And then from there, after you have prepared your infrastructure, you can begin to go to step 2, which is something you all should be familiar with if you use Azure Site Recovery, but it's the same UI. Please note that once you go past the configuration tool, that this is the normal Azure Site Recovery tool now that will cost the normal $25 per VM per month. However, and of course, any other compute or storage costs that are associated with it. Right now, this tool, the configuration tool, only supports Hyper-V VMs. We're working to get VMware and other sources supported as well. So please look forward to that. Right now it is in public preview, but we will do our best to get it out to GA with all of the new support and changes, hopefully by this fall. Yes. And with that, does anyone have questions?
Yep, so there's a question in the chat from Kevin. Does Hyper-V support also include Azure Local? And I guess this is a good place to specify, do you support VMware environments or what the plans are there?
Yeah, the plans are to eventually support like VMware environments and like others. But right now, like it only does Hyper-V. And I'm not quite sure if it would support Azure Local specifically. I have to check on that, Kevin. Any other questions? I think Arnav, that question might be for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the question was, are there plans to incorporate third-party applications into AUM? And I wanted to share, yes, the AUM team is exploring app patching scenarios as well. And we're always happy to connect you with the right subject matter experts from the AUM side as well. So, any questions, folks, for Theo with Site Recovery? We have one from Abdullah. Does ASR support Arc SQL Server as well?
I think it depends on whether the server is Windows Server, but it should support like Arc SQL servers as long as it meets the two requirements, right? Like there's a Hyper-V site, and it is a Windows Server OS. Those are the two requirements.
Next, we have from Jeremy, are there plans to support failover cluster sets in Azure Site Recovery like a soft set?
For the configuration tool, there aren't like any concrete plans, but yeah, for the configuration tool, that's not on our roadmap.
Awesome. Well, if there are no additional questions, thank you so much, Theo, for sharing. And if folks have feedback on ASR, how should they be reaching out?
Oh, you can actually contact me directly if you have any feedback or comments. And this is for any of the tools that are under the Windows Server like Azure Arc management like plane. So that includes not only like ASR config, but Windows Admin Center, right? Like remote support, best practices assessment, and Network HUD or ExcelNet. Even though like I don't specifically like own those two features, I work with the PMs like closely to build that up. So if you have any feedback on any of those features or features that you would like to see be incorporated and be part of like project like Renaissance under like, the SA reclass, please let us know as we're trying to get these features out from, public preview to GA. We want to make sure that we build in the direction that benefits you all the most. So please, any feedback or ideas, send them my way.
And I think we also have an ask in the chat. Theo, looks like you will be coming up here for another community call real soon to go into more detail about the accelerated networking. with Arc Server 2025. I believe that's in preview, so we'll definitely
Yeah,
cover
it's
that
in
in
private preview. So that's why like you won't be able to get any like public documentation on it. Just because like that stuff hasn't been published like at all. And I'm replying in the comments.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Theo, for sharing more on this. With that, we'll go ahead and we'll go to the last slide, which is feedback on Operations 360. And so for that customer feedback, we're going to invite up Megan to go ahead and drive that as well.
Yeah, that sounds great, Arnav. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay, and can you guys see my screen? Apologies, I'm having some internet issues today.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Awesome. Well, yeah, no, really happy to be here. I'll give it a go to turn on my camera if this will work. But so my name is Megan McCrory, and I am a product manager on the Azure Arc platform team. And so excited to be talking to you guys today about a new area that we're looking into, and we're kind of coined this term Ops 360. This isn't something that is out there yet. We're in the product ideation stage. And so we're really looking for some feedback from our Arc server community on what we're looking to build. And so we are going to have more of an interactive session where we're going to have some polls throughout the presentation as we sort of think about the customer experience that we're looking to offer. And so with that, actually, to start it out, we want to go ahead and have a quick poll question around just how many servers do you currently manage today? And this is going to help us better understand sort of what the landscape is as we're thinking about how we can help you better onboard and operate and manage your servers across the board. So if you wouldn't mind taking this quick time to answer this poll question for us, that would be awesome. And let me see here. I'm going to see if I can take a look at the results and see if things are coming in. All right. So it definitely seems that a lot of folks have around 100 to 500. So that is really cool to see. So our next poll question that we have is around how you onboard to management services today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this one. And so this is something that we're really curious about, especially for our customers who are using this at scale. You know, do you use the portal? Do you use Azure Policy? This is, again, going to really help us sort of identify how we can better help customers when it comes to how they're onboarding to management services today. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here while some answers come through. So we definitely got portal here. We've got templates, bicep, Terraform, some command line policy. So no, this is awesome. All right. And so as these are coming in, I'm going to launch the very last poll before we jump into what we're going to talk about today, is how easy is it for you to actually onboard to these Azure management services? So let me go ahead and launch this one, if it will. All right. I don't know if that's actually going through. Oh, okay. All right. I hope I did this right. Okay. So let's see here. I'm going to review these results as well. Okay, cool. We've definitely got some coming in. All right, so what we're going to dig into is now sort of what we're thinking about for this Ops 360. So our goal here is to really centralize the way that customers are onboarding to management services, whether you're running on Azure or off Azure. And so this is one that has become just a sense where we know that a lot of our management tooling is sort of fragmented today around how exactly do you set up Azure monitoring, how do you set up Update Manager, and so on. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is whether you have machines that are either Azure virtual machines or Arc-enabled servers, how can we basically bring all of these things together? The other thing that we're doing is we know from the Arc side, especially, that the pricing complexity when it comes to these management services is really difficult to understand. And so one of the things that we're really focused on is how do we actually be able to sort of bring together an easy way that you can actually have just one price point for a set of management services overall. And so that's another thing that we're really hoping to accomplish with Ops 360. And then last but not least is unified management. So now after you actually onboard to all of these things in a centralized way, how do I actually unify the management? And so our idea is, can we actually bring all of these management services together on a single sort of dashboard view? But then of course, if you want to do advanced operations, you still continue to go to those individual experiences is the idea. So we don't want to sort of reinvent the wheel on everything, but we just want a place where you can sort of come together so you can see an overall picture of here's what's happening for both my Azure estate and my off Azure estate. And so right now, sort of the thinking is, do we start with virtual machines and Arc-enabled servers, but in the future, Kubernetes and so on. But that's just a quick rundown of sort of what we're thinking for Ops 360. And now what we want to sort of focus on for this interactive session is more on the onboarding side. So this is where we want to come to understand more about some of the different flexibility and customizations that you might want to make if you're using Ops 360 as we're developing this product. But as I mentioned, here's sort of an overview of what it would look like potentially if you have sort of this one-stop shop for all of your management and operational tasks. So you can kind of see one cool thing too that we really want to do is, because we now have all of the data from these management services, really leveraging Copilot to sort of drive insights and operations. And then two, just being able to sort of have all of this together in one place for, again, both your Azure and your Arc estate. With that being said, though, I'm going to now come over to the onboarding experience. So these are really low-level mock-ups that we're thinking about, and this is just going to help us better understand sort of what we're thinking about building and help us get some feedback on this. And so if someone is coming through here and they click on Enable Ops 360, basically what we're thinking about is a way for customers to be able to select either a given scope or a list of virtual machines or Arc-enabled servers that they want to go ahead and opt in for. And then once you have your selected machines, you could then come through and you would basically have these, what we're calling Ops 360 plans. So we are sort of envisioning, do we have this sort of basics plan, which has, a standard set of services with then again, that simplified price point for our Arc server customers. And then of course, then we also have maybe a premium offer that has a list of more services. Again, all of these pricings are just mock-ups. None of this is truly out there or what it's going to be. But we did just want to sort of be able to have something to sort of understand or get our thoughts across around what we're thinking about building here. And so with that being said, after you select which plan you're interested in, you sort of click this finish button. And what this will happen is basically it will kick off not only the standardized billing across the board for you, but also the service installation for you. So you sort of now get that automatic onboarding and the billing that will be taking place once you hit the finish button. So overall, before we start getting into some of the nitty-gritty details, I'm going to launch our next poll question, and it's really just, what's the overall first impression of the product? Is this something that sort of resonates with you? Is this something that would be easy for you to use and that potentially that you and your company would benefit from? So I'm going to go ahead and launch a couple of these. All right. And then see if I can get the last one to launch here for how important it is for you to be able to have this for both Azure infrastructure and Arc-enabled infrastructure in a single flow. If I am able to launch this one as well. All right. Cool. So now some of these are coming in, and I apologize, I am not able to see the chat. So if they've got any questions, definitely Arnaud, feel free to stop me as well.
Nope, no questions so far.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, thank you all for filling out some of the poll questions here. So now we're really going to be taking a deeper dive into some of the different areas that we want to get a little bit more feedback on. And so one thing here that we're thinking about doing is whenever you're onboarding to Ops 360, you basically have the options of using either a scope. So you can choose like a management group, subscription, resource group. And of course, once you onboard, let's say that subscription, all machines that are in that subscription and then any net new machines coming will automatically be configured with Ops 360, or you have the machine level. And this basically allows you to pick and choose the given virtual machines that you're interested in. And so one of our questions, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the next poll, is more around the scope. What kind of scope are you looking to do? Do you want to have more of a scope level onboarding, or do you prefer sort of a pick and choose machine level onboarding? So I'm just going to go ahead and submit that poll and see if we can get some responses here. All right, this is taking a minute to load, so I'm going to keep going. So after you choose basically which exactly you want to onboard. After that is when you actually come and you select your given plan. And so again, what we're thinking here is this is going to be a really easy way for customers to sort of get out of the box value from these management services with basically the Microsoft recommended defaults. However, one thing that we're thinking about is like if you purchase this basic Ops 360 plan, you get all of these given services. But one of our questions is, do you actually want the ability to sort of customize what you actually get onboarded to? And so for this, do you actually want to be able to say, I only want to onboard to Azure monitoring and update management right now, not, let's say, machine configuration? Do you guys want that sort of flexibility where you can pick and choose? Or because it's part of this bundled plan, would you prefer if just everything was onboarded? So that's sort of our next idea is, do we want to provide that flexibility to allow customers to sort of pick and choose to say which services they actually want Ops 360 to go and install for them? All right. And let me see here. I'm going to see if I can check out the results of this really quick. So it definitely has a 4.1. So it definitely seems that it's important to have this flexibility, which is good to see. It's sort of what we thought. All right. Coming forward, one other thing that we were thinking about is, for the given set of services, obviously we sort of have the defaults that are the recommended settings that is done by Microsoft. But do you actually want the advanced options to configure some of these settings? And so, for instance, for monitoring, do you have the need to configure your Azure Monitoring Insights Log Analytics workspace? Do you have the need to configure your alert rules? Or are you okay with just taking the basics and the defaults, and then potentially after post onboarding, you still have the ability to change things, but at least for now, this is sort of what will be onboarded to. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can view some of these results live here and see if we can get this one in. All right. Yeah, so again, we're getting around a 4.4. So definitely interesting to see that it would be nice to sort of have this all in one-stop shop where you sort of have the knobs and turns if you need them directly through this onboarding flow. All right.
Megan, I think
Yeah.
Jeff actually has a question. His hand has been up, and I also see in the chat there's a question: are there any costs associated with Ops 360? Sorry to interrupt the flow.
No, I appreciate it. So just to answer maybe the question in the chat before I forget, so the Ops 360, we are thinking about just having the base rate for the given set of plans. And so one thing though that we're still thinking about is what exactly is going to be included in that? Is it everything, or is there still going to be potentially some ingestion costs associated to, for instance, Azure monitoring? And so we're still working on the business plan, but like for Arc right now, like we charge just a base rate for sort of using Update Manager on a per server basis, and for instance, like machine configuration. And so we want to sort of consolidate all of that in just to one price point, so you'll no longer be charged a la carte for these management services, but that's likely not going to include everything. There's likely going to be some still ingestion rates that come through the solution.
That's exactly where I was going. And so I was curious more about like if you want to show, like I found like if you do the monitoring for like one VM, it's like 15 cents a day or something like that. So I'd be curious just to know if like we could see some costs of what those extra ones are, but that's great. You're going there as well. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that we really want to simplify. for our customers. And so if we can actually even take some of that into the Ops 360 plan, it would be nice. But yeah, we'll have to, we're still narrowing down what exactly is included in the offer, but definitely noted. All right, and apologize again, I can't see the chat. Arnaud, did you mention someone else has their hand up? Or
No,
that was
that
Jeff?
I think
Okay.
there was a question of would that price point also take into consideration the SA pricing updates or SA benefits? And I believe the answer is the SA benefits will include this, right, Megan?
Yeah, that's correct. So in sort of our basic offering, SA benefits would be included here, and so it would be at no charge or at no additional cost. Great questions. All right. So continuing onwards, we have just a couple more poll questions for everybody, if you wouldn't mind sticking with me. This next one is more around how important it is for you to sort of centrally manage the configuration of these services. And so this is even sort of how we set it up through onboarding, and then even sort of how you go about sort of on your day in management. Maybe something changes. Maybe you want to change your maintenance configuration. And so how important is it to you to be able to do that in a more central manner versus, having to go and individually go to that service to be able to change that setting? So sort of one thing that we've been toying around with is, in the older days, whenever you're setting up a new laptop, you have to sort of personalize it and customize it, download your applications, all of that each time you get a new device. But then now that we have like M365, a lot of these settings are saved and they're just automatically applied to whatever new device you register against your profile. And so one thing that we're thinking about is how can we better help customers sort of set up the management of these given services in a central way. And then if you need to make a change, you can do so in an easy fashion. So let me see if I can get some interesting numbers here. So yeah, 4.5 on this one. So good to know that this is something that would be beneficial for our customers. The next one that I'm going to launch here. Oh yeah, sorry. Any thoughts or questions? All right.
I have a thought.
So,
I have a thought.
Yeah, go for it.
Megan, real quick. So once we start the sophistication of the 360 onboarding, my thought is that, machines, a good number of Arc-enabled machines will eventually migrate to Azure. And as everyone knows, you need to uninstall the connected machine agent on premises before you attempt to migrate. It's a prerequisite. So today we just go to the Azure portal and delete the machine, and we do away with it. I'm just concerned that I want to make sure that you're going to cover, when you develop this feature, the capability to offboard, right? We don't want to have to go to 12 different places to offboard the same machine if it's embedded in all these different views. So that was my comment.
Yep, and you're actually, after this poll question, that is my next question. So you're ahead of the game, Steve. But yeah, I love it. We'll talk about that in just a second. All right. So really quick before we get there on offboarding, for Ops 360, one thing that we're also thinking about is, if you do have the standard configuration that's being applied to a given machine, and then it drifts from this desired configuration, how important is it for sort of this automatic correction should happen? Or do you more so just want an alert because maybe something was done on manually and for a purpose versus sort of automatically corrected? But taking a look here, it looks like this is ranking around 4.5, so definitely something that's interesting for customers. And then last but not least on this page is on the offboarding scenario. And so one of the things that we're thinking about is for offboarding, we know that obviously we're going to stop billing you at the Ops 360 rate. But then the idea is, what do you expect to happen to sort of those management services? Do you expect them to be able to be uninstalled at scale? Or do you want the option to sort of pick and choose how you want to offboard to these management services? Or do you want them to just leave them alone, that they're there for a reason and you'll go and manually clean up? So this was another one sort of related, Steve, that we're really interested in. And so sort of seeing the answers come through here, it's definitely looking like the option to decide at the time of offboarding to either keep the services as is or uninstall. So sort of having that flexibility is what's resonating a lot with customers. All right. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and finish up here. So we just have two more. So for this one, if what we're thinking about here is that if a machine was already configured with a given service, like let's say you've already set up Azure Update Manager, and now you're coming through Ops 360 and maybe it has slightly different settings, how do you want that machine to be configured? Are you interested in sort of having the machine have its current settings remain, or do you want it to inherit the Ops 360 settings? And so we're kind of curious to see sort of what do we do if something's already configured? Do we just leave it alone, or do we give some type of overwrite option? All right, and seeing some of the data come through, that definitely allowing for the behavior that you can actually choose while onboarding, whether or not you want it to remain as is or inherit the settings is definitely the winner here. But awesome, really good to see this come through. And then last but not least, I'm going to do the last poll here. So this is around stack ranking the following capabilities sort of in order of importance to you. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of things. If we were able to do them all in the very first phase, we would. But oftentimes we have to sort of prioritize what exactly we can do first. And so if you wouldn't mind sort of taking the time to sort of stack rank some of the 5 capabilities that we're looking at, just to help us better understand and prioritize from the engineering side around what potentially we need to go do first. All right. Cool. So I'm seeing some data come back now for this one. Definitely the customization of the service settings is high on the list for folks, as well as being able to customize those services that we automatically onboard. Up in that the ability to sort of autocorrect when drift. So no, this is really, really great. Thank you all for bearing with me as we went through a bunch of those poll questions. I do appreciate it. 2, if you're interested in providing more feedback, we would absolutely love to talk to you. We have this survey link here under aka.ms/ops360 feedback, or you can scan this QR code and it will take you there. So if you're interested, we would love to have a one-on-one conversation and just get more details from you guys around sort of what we're building, and especially as we continue to sort of pick and choose some of the features that we want to go out with first. Really getting your feedback on this is extremely beneficial. But let me pause here again, and I think I can, now that I'm done with the polls, I think I can hopefully grab the chat over here in this window. But is there any other questions or anything that I can help out with? Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
So we're currently in the process of trying to Arc enable a lot of our existing infrastructure, and finding that rolling out the Arc agent with GPO to be kind of problematic. And I'm wondering if anybody has any guidance on better ways to do that than just using GPOs and the shared client secret function that is in the GPO policy.
Yeah, have you considered using, so we also support like SCCM based deployment. I don't know if the environments you can use that with the sort of schedule task in order to just deploy our onboarding script. The other options are we do have like Ansible playbooks as well. I'm not sure if either of those would potentially work for you.
We don't currently have an SCCM option out there, but we can look at that. And then do you have any guidance on setting up a template that would auto onboard after deploy the template?
What type of template would it be?
Just like a VM template. Yeah, just no SVM template.
Got it. Yeah, I think that with the VM template, the only thing to be wary of is you either have to do interactive device login or you have to use the service principal. And we typically don't recommend you just because the service principal has a lifetime of expiration. So we typically don't recommend that unless you'd want to refresh. But I'm not sure if other folks have any kind of guidance there from either what you've done for your deployment or from what you've done with customers you've worked with. Feel free to just unmute and share.
Yeah, the service principal lifetime has been our hang up too. So I guess if it's got to be an interactive login, then that's the answer.
Yeah, and you can set the service principal lifetime to whatever you want. So it's not just the 30 days, etc. out of box. It's just be careful with the security credentialing there in terms of limiting it down to just the Arc machine onboarding role. Yep.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep, awesome. I think we have a question, Megan, around is Ops 360 forcing Arc to retire?
Yeah, no, definitely not. So our whole goal is just to better streamline the way that you're able to manage resources, whether they're enabled through Azure Arc, if they're off Azure, or if you have resources that are on Azure. So definitely nothing that we're really just trying to make things more consistent, no matter where you're running. So definitely nothing here that we want to force Arc retirement.
Awesome. I do see some other questions related to like AD/SSH login support, etc. But I think that some of those are sort of out of scope here. But with that, and I know we're heading at time, really appreciate Megan, you kind of walking through Ops 360 and collecting feedback. And for folks, I think like earlier last year on this time, you shared like feedback on the multi-cloud connector, and now that's available for public preview for everyone to try out. So the feedback the community is providing, this is really going into product development. So really appreciate everyone participating.
Yes, 100%. And I know it's a lot of poll questions, so I really appreciate it. This is really going to help us though build the right product to help customers just like yourselves. So we appreciate it. And thank you, Arnav, for hosting this and for having us.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, with that, that's a wrap for today. Really appreciate it. And yeah, please keep us posted on any topics you'd like us to cover, and we will be uploading our recordings to YouTube. Thank you.